I'm doing this with no makeup on because I literally do not care. Welcome to Coffee Time, where I basically drink coffee and tell you what's up in the makeup industry. And I focus on one specific topic for the whole video. Today we're gonna talk about brushes, how to clean your brushes and why you would select certain brushes and why you would wash them with certain things, and just kind of get those basics out of the way. If you're new here, hi, my name is Miss Megan Robinson and I do makeup on the internet and I eat snacks for fun, and I have a bit of an attitude and I hope you enjoy watching. I do more than makeup just on the internet, but you get it. Okay, so right off the bat, you're gonna get so much more control when you use a brush. You can be strategic about your placement, you can control your coverage, you can figure out technique that works for you. Oftentimes I ask people like, how heavy-handed are you? What technique do you naturally do? Are you more like circles on the skin? Do you bounce? Where are you putting the foundation? What product is it? Like there's so many, again, it's the art that goes into makeup and brushes that it's just so important. I don't think that beauty blenders are, I don't think that beauty blenders should be in kits unless every single client is getting their own. I don't think that you can sanitize and wash a sponge in the same way you can sanitize and wash a brush. Their brushes aren't bullshit. Like it's not, nobody's lying to you about why you would want to use a brush. And until you figure out, again, there's so many questions that should be asked prior to just picking up a brush. So I'm gonna try and make that a little bit easier for you. Also, my nails are back on. This is my Percy Pig little bucket. It's like underwear. I would rather buy new brushes than wash them. It's honestly painful. So here is step one. How often do you need to wash your brush? Washing your brushes can be a very simple task if you're consistent with it. If you're not, then you have this one day where you have to wash everything and it just can drive you crazy. So if you can be consistent and do spot cleaning after you're done or every few days, it's gonna make your life so much easier. Take my advice, because I don't do it. And every time I get to the point where I have to clean them, I'm like, Megan, you know better. So what is spot cleaning? Spot cleaning is when on the spot you are cleaning the brush. So let's say you just finished your eye makeup and you're like, your makeup's done. Just take 30 seconds to do this. Paper towel, brush cleaner. This is a MAC brush cleaner. There's so many different brush cleaners out there. Really don't care what you use, just clean your brushes. Paper towel, brush. And you're just working the product and the color basically out of the brush. And the reason you want to spot clean when you're done is you're gonna prevent, further staining from happening. The brush cleaner is going to sanitize and condition the brushes too, to keep them in good condition. My MAC brushes are from 2008 and I'm using the same ones since the very beginning, and I don't even take care of them that well, as you can see, but I don't travel with my brushes either. That's another thing. Stop traveling with your brushes. You're screwing them up. Like stop shoving them in your makeup bags. I see it every day. You don't want to use dish soap, which I do, and I'll explain why later. The reason you don't want to use dish soap is you are really not going to get all of the suds out of here. They're going to build up in between the hairs, and then it's just, the brush is not going to perform or last as long. So there, beautiful, nice and clean. Reshape your brush and always kind of bring the bristles into a point, and then you lay it flat to dry. Reason being, any fluid, but it's not really going to happen in this case with spot cleaning, but lay it flat to dry. What you don't want happening is you don't want any liquid that's in the bristles to fall into the ferrule. That's how this piece comes off, because it breaks down the glue that's holding everything together. Maybe I'll just clean mine as I talk. When you come up against ones like this, so this has lip product in it, so it's gonna have more of like a waterproof formula. Still, I'll pour directly on. And with these, like I'm wiggling the brush side to side to get the liquid through. I'm not even gonna do it with my own brushes. I see people do this so aggressively and you're ruining your brush. Like take care of your makeup. People have lost the like delicacy to makeup, and it just drives me literally crazy. Another thing to consider as well is the cost of a brush. Another hill of mine to die on. This is actually coming out beautifully. So let's take a foundation brush, for instance. This is the 128. This is $42, okay? I'm going to pay $42 one time. I can guarantee you in 2033, your brush is still gonna be in the same condition and you only paid that $42 once. Sponges, a beauty blender is $26, right? That you need to replenish. So after you've bought 2 sponges, you've paid for 1 brush that you don't have to replace, but you're gonna continually replace this. I of course understand the actually having to put the lump sum of money down right away. But again, it's that investment piece that's gonna save you in the long run. Look at that. I'm saying it as if like, I don't know. So again, press it. Don't pull on the hairs. I've seen brushes where people are like, this brush sucks. All the hairs came out. That literally only happens when you're too rough and you pull it. So I just pinch any liquid and then again, leave it flat to dry. Look at that. So your powder-based brushes, like your bronzer and your blush, if you don't have a ton of different shades, honestly, these ones can sit for a while. Powders generally don't hold on to bacteria. Obviously, when you've put a powder product on top of wet foundation, there could be a buildup that happens here over time. That's normal. These can definitely sit longer. And cleaning your brushes, especially your foundation and your powder brushes, like for the face, it's like jeans. You don't wash your jeans all the time. You just know when you put them on one day, you're like, these don't feel good anymore. And that's when you would wash it. When your foundation's not applying as nice as it could, it's time to wash your brush. Or in my case, buy a new brush. Okay, so what have we covered so far? Why you would want a brush, how to clean your brushes, the cost of brushes. Here's another thing too, because I hear it all the time. Why would I spend $32 on a brush when I could just buy one for, $6? And again, it's the quality of it and it's how it's made. Mac brushes specifically, they're handmade, right? So it's like 3 different people oversee one brush, right? Someone bundled and cut the hair, someone attached it to the ferrule, someone glued it to the wooden handle. Would you do that for free? No. So it's the difference between something that is mass produced and something that's prestige and made in smaller quantities. Like, facts are facts. Let's talk about eyes and the type of brushes that you would use. Some things you have to take into consideration is the size of your eye. Is your eye big? Then you're gonna probably want the bigger version of some brushes. Is your eye tiny? You're gonna want the tiny version of some brushes. For example, here's examples of blending brushes. 224, 217, 221. 3 different sizes, large, medium, small. 217 is the GOAT of all eyeshadow brushes. I don't care what anybody says. I'll talk about that one in a second. But the size of your eye is going to determine how you use these. So I have massive eyes, so I can use all 3 of these. If somebody had smaller eyes and they were working in their crease and they wanted to be slightly defined but blended, and they have small eyes and went in with this, it would just be a hot fire mess all in this area because the brush is covering too large of a space. You can see on my eyes, even if I go in here, I just get a really nice transition. Like, you can see like my eyebrow area here, it just covers all of this. That's not gonna be the same for somebody that has small eyes. So this would be something that you're literally probably using clean and cleaning up edges, but realistically, you don't even need it. 217 is that in-between guy. So for me, it goes right into the crease, but it still sits higher than that. So it's gonna buff things out and blend it. The beauty of the 217 and why it is that bitch is you can use the flat side of the brush because it is flat. It's not as dome-shaped around this way as the 224. So if you wanted to pack shadow on this way, if your lid space can handle it, you're gonna do that. Then you can also turn it and have it in your crease. If you have teeny tiny eyes, the 221 is gonna be your equivalent of these for your eye shape. And again, so on me, this goes right into that shadowing that you're seeing there, and it's not gonna blend a ton. So for me, this is for great definition. But on someone else, it's gonna do the equivalent of what this one does for me. I know that makes sense. It's just a lot of information. So you should always have multiple blending brushes if you are into eye makeup. If you're not, it's fine, relax, just have like 1 or 2. But if you're looking online and you're seeing like all these really great eye looks, there's multiple brushes being used most of the time. So blending brushes, okay? When you're blending, there's one really big rule, and it's where you're holding the brush. If you're holding it on the ferrule, which is the silver part, and you're going in like this, there's so much control that's happening here. You don't get a really smooth blend. This is just for packing. That would just pack everything on, but also make it look patchy because it's a blending brush. If you hold it in the middle, you're gonna get like a pretty soft application. And if you hold it at the end, it's gonna be the lightest dusting because there's less control. Keep that in mind when you're selecting your colors and you're going to blend, like how soft you want the color to look. If you want the color to be really soft, make sure you pull your hand back to blend. If you want more impact, so for me, if I was doing definition in my crease where I didn't want it to be blown out, I'm gonna hold it with a little bit more control at the top of the brush to keep it in this area. If I go back here, it naturally just starts to kind of push on the outside. Next, how do you even begin to pick your foundation brush? So one, it's gonna come down to, and again, if you have the ability to speak to an artist in wherever you're shopping. So one of the first things is, what type of foundation are you using? That is a factor when picking the foundation brush, paired with what your natural technique is. For me, I like to press stuff into the skin and then kind of sweep downwards. I work very fast too, so I prefer something that's a little bit larger, that's gonna cover more area quicker. If you have a cream or a fuller coverage product, pick a brush that's more rounded and dense to work with that. If you have a liquid foundation, from like thin tinted moisturizer kind of liquid to a fuller coverage liquid, and you want the product to remain sheer or look thin, you're gonna pick something like this that's less dense, it has more flexibility, and it's going to take a really small amount of product and spread it thinly. There's no density in there to build the product upwards. And even though this is a stippling brush, I find that these are best for circular motions on the skin now that brushes like this exist. I don't even think I own one, but flat foundation brushes, like the traditional paintbrush, honestly, I don't know anybody that really uses those anymore. And that technique, when you're holding it, you're not gonna ever be doing circular motions. You're always, I don't have anything even like the equivalent. I have this. I don't even know where this is from. So something like this, but imagine that it's not fluffy. You can't, when that brush is stiff, you can't go like this, right? You have to go with the directions of the brush. You're always gonna be painting that, and it sits on the surface more, where ones like these help marry the foundation and primer, or like foundation in your skin together, where this to me still sits very much on the surface. Oftentimes you might see this being used for skincare or primers. When it comes to concealer is one of the hardest things to deal with. My favorite concealer brush for the longest time, like for years, this was my favorite, was the 286. And back, I think this is an original one. Back when these were natural hair and synthetic hair, the white was synthetic and picked up the product, and then the dark hairs were natural and kind of buffed it around. This was like the air. Oh, you know what other one was so good too? Where is it? I think I only have a mini of it. The 130. Oh, I can't see what's in here. You had a 130 brush and a 286 brush. You were that bitch. And a 217. Basically, it was just different in density. This is old. It was just different in density than the 224. And this was like your airbrush for under the eye. It buffed the product in. It was small enough that you could build the coverage and like get into really small areas. I wouldn't say it was for layering purposes, but it was So good. But now I can't see shit in front of me. A fluffy eyeshadow brush for concealer for under the eye is for anybody who likes to do this with their makeup. Like it's just their natural technique. For people that prefer this stamping kind of motion, you're gonna look for that same kind of dome shape, but obviously smaller because you're working in a smaller area. If you were painting your apartment, you're not gonna paint your whole apartment with the brush that you do the trim with, right? So it's the same concept on the face. So you're gonna use something like this that's a little bit more densely packed and tinier, and that's gonna help you build your coverage by bouncing it up and down on the skin. And again, when you have a brush that's so tiny, you can target certain areas, right? You could build your coverage here and here, and then kind of sweep across if you need to. There's so many different techniques, and you just have to see what works best for you with the product that you're working with. This brush has seen its day. The 195 concealer brush, or any flat, synthetic, thick looking concealer brush, densely packed, those are more for if you were laying down fuller coverage concealers and you really need them to lay flat. You're not looking to buff the product into the skin. So that could be something for like acne scarring, color correction, tattoo cover, where you really need the product to lay opaque and full on the skin, where these ones are your natural kind of buffing and building. This is full coverage right away. Powder, bronzer, highlight, all of that stuff. The bigger and fluffier the brushes, the softer the product goes on. So if I was to bronze with this, it's gonna probably go muddy pretty fast and be really intense. Where I'm gonna be like, this is too much product, now I need to take another brush and buff it away. But if I go in with something that's big and fluffy, it's going to dust a really small amount of product onto the face. So that's another thing to consider too, is your face size and then how intense you want the product to be. So there's not this like one size fits all or like one answer for everything, because you have to consider what product you're using. So if you were to say, Megan, help me, I need a bronzer brush, my first thing I'm going to ask you is, what type of bronzer are you using? How bronzy do you want to be? And what other product is it sitting on? If you told me that you wanted to be super, super bronzy, but it's going to be sitting on top of like a full coverage liquid foundation, I'm still gonna lean towards this because I need to consider the fact that the powder is mixing into a liquid. If you do it with this, that's where you get patchiness. Your small brushes or your detail brushes or your packing brushes, so things like these that are flat and small, the technique for these is usually gonna be just a pressing motion. You're never really sweeping or blending with something like this, not often, maybe under the eye. Pencil brushes, fine detail work to add shadowing or color under the eye. When you get into the really tiny, I mean, this isn't even really tiny, there's smaller brushes out there. But when you get into these tinier brushes, especially under here, because of its density, if you're working with powder, you end up getting fallout if you're too rough with it. You're always gonna do a pressing motion to build your color. Your brushes like this that are densely packed and flat, they're like shader brushes. They're gonna be ones that you're kind of pressing color on with to build your eye. That's the 239. The 242 when it's dry. To me, this is like the smoky eye brush. It's gonna pick up more product for you and place more product down, where because of the way that these hairs are cut on the 239, it kind of blends it out at the same time, where this one really won't. I love the 242. I don't like using angled brushes on my eye because to me, I have no control, because I want the freedom to work with a pointed liner brush like a pen. Angled brushes, you can kind of only drag with them and that's it. So with a pointed liner brush, I'm in full control of how I want it to be. And with pointed liner brushes, you're either like laying it down on its side to create your shape, or you're doing fine detail work with more control, holding it like a pen. So I don't know if you caught that, but when I was doing this here, which I would be creating a line for wing liner, my hand's at the back of the brush. When I wanted to have more control here, I moved it forward. I don't lie. So this can be very intimidating for someone because it's like, it's so thin, what do I do? An angled brush might be better for you. Where for me, I just see lots of freedom and control with this. So again, know what your expertise level is. When would you use dish soap? Well, I'm glad you asked. Don't brush cleanse your foundation brushes consistently, the buildup in this is pretty intense. You kind of need something to go in a little bit deeper. Especially if you live in Canada, like not all of these things are accessible, like without having to pay duties and stuff. So you're gonna reach for Dawn dish soap. And you just have to be so careful with when you're working with this to get out the stuff that's on the inside. I don't think the MAC airbrush cleaner is made anymore, but I used to use that to get in and break down everything that was inside. Rest in peace, because I don't know if it's still a thing. But once a month, you might go in and like deep clean a brush where you do a little bit of this. You might use a little bit of makeup remover that's oil-based to like strip down anything that's in there, a little bit of alcohol, dish soap, and do like a concoction, and you're gonna mix it with water, or even the Beauty Blender soap is really great too. And you're gonna mix it with a little bit of water and really deep cleanse them. The more consistent you are with this, the more consistent you are with brush cleaning and spot cleansing, the easier your brush life will be. And did I say this already? Stop shoving these brushes in, so like this. Stop shoving these brushes in your makeup bags. They're ending up like this. Terrible. So for example, this is the brush I put my Studio Fix powder on with under my eye after my concealer. So it's now getting cakey, like the product is mixing together. So soon this will not be usable and I'll have no choice but to wash it. Let's see what happens. So I'm gonna soak it. And you could do this on, yeah, so much comes out. You can do this on a towel, but realistically, it's gonna take me forever to wash those towels because I'm not gonna put those in with my regular clothes and I'm not gonna have enough to wash just those towels, you know? So kill me, I'm using paper towel. Actually, see, that's not even that bad. The nice thing though, so when I swear to God, I haven't washed my brushes in like 2 months. It has to be even before then. The nice thing when I deep clean my brushes is I'll take a group of them that are all the same hair and I'll just go to town and I'll clean like 7 brushes at one time versus spot cleaning 1 at a time. But look at that. She's beautiful to me. Honestly, not gonna know what works best for you until you try your technique paired with the formula of the product that you're working with and then the style of brush that you end up choosing. Is that all I have to say about brushes? And you just have to remember at the end of the day that brushes are investment pieces. It's not something, I mean, unless you're loaded, sure, you can like build a whole collection right away, but it is something that takes time to build and that's okay. Don't waste your money buying the lower quality brushes because something about them is gonna fail on you. For example, I have this one here for highlighter. The hair's falling out. It's sharp when I put it on my skin versus something like this that's just like cut a little bit better and softer. So if you need something to tide you over, yes, but definitely invest in good brushes and they will be there for you. I had a 160, like this is the 168. I had a cheaper version of it and within 2 months that one just ballooned open to the point like I couldn't reshape it back, where the 168 has remained in its same shape this whole time. Oh, that's another thing. Hairs falling out versus hairs shedding. If you, and it doesn't really happen with synthetic brushes anymore, if you have any natural hair brushes, it is normal for full hairs to fall out of the bundle. So if you were buffing this on your skin and you saw one long hair, that's normal. It just fell out of its little bundle. If you see it begin to look fuzzy, where it's like breaking off on the top, that means the brush is done. There is no recovering from it. You've done something wrong. That's the tips of the hairs breaking off. There is no recovering from that. That's how some of you guys can end up with brushes that like, there's different lengths of everything. It's been damaged for too long or like mishandled. There's just so many different elements and layers to why a product could be chosen for you or why you might pick a product, which is why I don't always recommend talking to so many different artists and getting so many different opinions, because all of them are correct and you're just gonna overwhelm yourself. So especially too, if you are following people online, find your core like 2 or 3 people that kind of cover different elements of things you like, or maybe it's like a style of makeup that you really like to follow, and stick with that, because you are going to overwhelm yourself and not understand why you're hearing so many different things, because at the end of the day, it is art. So it's subjective to a certain degree. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Coffee Time and you learned some things about brushes. Let me know in the comments below what topic you want me to cover next. If you don't already follow me on TikTok, that's where the party is. I'm also on Instagram sometimes, but you can follow me there too. And until then, I'll see you next time. Bye.